I never thought my life would take such a turbulent turn, especially not because of someone I trusted so deeply. My name is Mark, and I used to think I had a perfect life with my wife, Jessica. We had been married for 7 years, and while we weren't without our typical struggles, I genuinely believed we were happy. We lived in a nice suburb, had a beautiful home, and even shared a couple of kids. Life was good, or so I thought. In hindsight, there were signs, but I was too blind or maybe too trusting to see them. Jessica had started spending more time with our neighbor, Tom. At first, I thought nothing of it. After all, they were friends and he was a nice guy. He and his wife were often over for barbecues, and I felt comfortable leaving them alone together while I ran errands. But soon enough, Jessica's late nights became frequent, and she started coming home with the smell of cheap cologne that was definitely not mine. I shrugged them off, convincing myself that this was just a phase or maybe she was just stressed with work. One Sunday afternoon, everything changed. I had just come back from picking up groceries when I noticed Jessica's car parked in the driveway. I was surprised. She had told me she was going out for brunch with a friend. As I walked into the house, I heard giggling. The sound was unmistakable and it led me to the back patio. My heart sank as I pulled the curtain aside. There they were, Jessica and Tom, sitting closely together, laughing, sharing what looked like an intimate moment. I felt as if the ground beneath me had crumbled away. I could hardly breathe. My mind raced and I stood frozen for what felt like hours. I wanted to confront them right there, but I hesitated. Part of me wanted to confront Jessica immediately, but the other part feared the storm brewing inside me. So I took a step back, my heart pounding against my ribs, and left the house quietly, trying to process what I had just witnessed. When Jessica came home later, I was a bundle of nerves. I didn't know how to approach her, but I couldn't let this slide. I ended up confronting her as soon as she walked through the door. "I saw you with Tom," I said, my voice steady but laced with anger. She froze, her eyes went wide, and for a moment I thought she might confess. Instead, she started crafting an elaborate lie, telling me I was mistaken, that they were just talking about neighborhood stuff. Her excuses just piled on, and each one was more far-fetched than the last. "We were just discussing the weather," she said, as if that could explain the chemistry I'd seen between them. I called bull on the whole thing. I told her I saw the way they looked at each other. I wasn't born yesterday, and I wasn't about to let her play me for a fool. The confrontation turned into a screaming match. Jessica's usual calm demeanor transformed into defensiveness. She insisted I was overreacting, that I was imagining things. That hurt, to be accused of being paranoid when I was simply responding to what I had seen with my own eyes. The emotional weight of the confrontation was crushing. I felt anger, betrayal, and a deep sorrow all at once. As the evening wore on, I couldn't shake off the feeling of violation. It wasn't just the act of infidelity that cut deep, it was the betrayal of trust, the time I had invested in our relationship, the love I thought we shared. I realized I was standing at a crossroads. I could either forgive and forget, or I could choose a different path. What did forgiveness really mean in this context? Could I ever trust her again? Regardless of my emotions, I needed to make a decision. The thought of staying in the same house with her, knowing what I now knew, felt unbearable. I needed space to think, to process, to figure out what was next for me. Little did I know, my decision was only the beginning of a much more complex journey. I started planning how to move forward, laying the groundwork for my revenge, though I hadn't fully recognized that's where I was headed just yet. I would let her live with the consequences of her choices, and I would ensure my life would turn out better than hers in the end. The days following that explosive confrontation with Jessica felt like a blur. I spent most of my time in a daze, oscillating between anger and despair. I knew I couldn't just sit back and let this betrayal eat away at me. I needed to take control of my life and my future. I wanted revenge, but not the kind that involved petty retribution. I wanted to redefine my life in a way that would show Jessica just what she had lost. I started planning my escape. I didn't want to remain in our house, which now felt tainted with the memories of her infidelity. It was clear that our marriage was over, but I still needed to devise a strategy that would make her realize the gravity of her actions and the consequences she would face. I had always envisioned a comfortable life, but now I felt a burning desire to elevate my circumstances and indulge in a lifestyle that Jessica would envy. At first, I focused on logistics. I began to research properties in upscale neighborhoods, places where I could envision a fresh start. I wanted a beautiful home, something luxurious and modern, where I could establish a new life for myself. I spent hours online, scrolling through listings and imagining what it would be like to live in a stunning house, complete with a spacious home office and a backyard that would make my kids happy. While I was planning my move, I made it a point to put on a brave face around Jessica. I didn't want her to suspect anything. I still had to play the role of the devoted husband while plotting my next steps. I began taking on more responsibilities at home, all the while working on my secret plan. I even volunteered to handle the kids' school activities, which made me feel more connected to them and also helped to divert Jessica's suspicion. Then came the biggest stroke of luck. I met someone. Her name was Sarah, a stunning woman who had recently moved into the neighborhood. We hit it off immediately during a community event. I wasn't looking for a new romantic interest, but Sarah was refreshing. She was kind, funny, and radiated a warmth that immediately attracted me. I could tell she had a life of her own, and she was not interested in games or drama. I started to spend more time with Sarah, which added another layer to my plan. Jessica had noticed my changing behavior. I began to subtly mention how I was considering making some changes in my life while dropping hints about how fulfilling it was to spend time with new people. This infuriated her. I could see the jealousy creeping onto her face whenever I brought up Sarah, even in passing. Meanwhile, I continued to finalize my plans to move. I found a stunning, luxurious home that felt more like a dream than a reality. It had a modern aesthetic with an open floor plan, a chef's kitchen, and a backyard that seemed perfect for hosting gatherings. I made an offer and it was accepted. The excitement bubbled within me as I envisioned my future there, free from the shadows of my past. The next couple of weeks were a whirlwind of activity. I hired movers, packed my belongings, and set everything in place for my new life. I had even started thinking about how I would decorate my new space, something that felt like mine. All the while, I maintained a semblance of normalcy at home. Jessica had no idea what was coming. Each day, I felt more empowered. I realized that the best revenge was not about confrontation or chaos. It was about taking control of my life in a way that would leave her regretting her choices. I wanted her to see me thriving, living well without her. I wanted her to realize that losing me was her greatest mistake. As the moving day approached, I found myself filled with anticipation. The thought of leaving the old life behind excited me. I could finally close that chapter, and as I envisioned myself standing in front of my new luxury home, I felt a rush of hope. The betrayal would not define me. Instead, it would propel me into a new life, one where I would be the man I always aspired to be. But before I could fully embrace my new beginning, I knew I had to confront Jessica one last time. She needed to understand the extent of her actions and the impact they had on our family. I planned a final talk, one that I hoped would be equal parts cathartic and enlightening for both of us. I wanted her to see me for who I was becoming, not just the man she had betrayed. It was time to lay the groundwork for my future without her and ensure she understood there would be no turning back once I made that final departure. The day of the final confrontation loomed over me like a dark cloud, a mix of dread and anticipation swirling within. I had devised a plan to sit down with Jessica and lay bare everything that had happened, and how her actions had led me to the decision to leave. I wanted it to be a moment of clarity for both of us, a chance for her to understand the depth of her betrayal, and for me to reclaim my dignity. I chose a quiet evening for our talk, after the kids were asleep. I made sure to keep my tone calm despite the storm brewing inside me. "Jessica, we need to talk," I said as she walked into the living room. I could see the flicker of confusion in her eyes, but she nodded. I gestured for her to sit, and as she settled in, I took a deep breath. "I know about you and Tom," I said, my voice steady. "I saw you with him in our backyard. I saw the way you laughed, the way you leaned into him. You didn't just betray me, you betrayed our family." For a moment her expression mirrored disbelief. "Mark, that's ridiculous. You're misinterpreting everything. We were just friends." She protested, her voice rising defensively, but I had no intention of letting her manipulate the narrative. "Just friends, it was more than that, and you know it. You've been lying to me, Jessica." I leaned forward, trying to hold her gaze. "I want you to understand this. I'm leaving. I've found a new place, and I'm moving on with my life." Her eyes widened, and for the first time I could see a flicker of vulnerability. "Can't just leave. We can work on things. I'll do better, I promise." Her voice cracked, and I could sense a mix of panic and desperation. "Work on what?" I shot back. "You've already made your choice. You've shown me who you are, and I can't trust you anymore. I deserve better than a marriage built on lies." The exchange turned into a whirlwind of emotions. She went from pleading for me to stay, to anger and accusations that I was overreacting. "You're throwing away our life because of a mistake." "You're being dramatic," she yelled. "What mistake? Cheating isn't a mistake, it's a choice. You chose to betray our vows, and now I'm choosing to walk away." I felt a sense of strength wash over me as I spoke. The more I talked, the clearer my resolve became. Jessica's facade began to crack. "I never meant for it to go this far," she confessed, her voice softened, almost a whisper. "Things got complicated. I was lonely, Mark. You were always busy with work." That struck a nerve. I had put in long hours to provide for our family, but I never thought it would be used against me. "So instead of talking to me about it, you decided to sleep with our neighbor. That's how you handle loneliness." I couldn't hide the anger in my voice. "It's not just about you, Jessica. You had a family and you threw it away." She fell silent, and for a moment there was an unsettling stillness that enveloped us. Perhaps she was beginning to grasp the weight of the situation. I could see tears pooling in her eyes, but I had to stay strong. I was emotionally exhausted, but I refused to allow her to manipulate my feelings any longer. "I've already made arrangements," I continued. "I'm moving out next week. The kids will be with me as much as possible, but I'm not sure how this will work out yet. I just know I can't stay here. I deserve a chance at happiness, and I know I'll find it." Her face crumpled and she reached out to touch my arm, but I instinctively pulled away. "Don't. I can't be swayed by your tears anymore. You had your chance." I stood up, the weight of the conversation pressing down on me, yet I felt lighter, unburdened by the weight of our failing marriage. "I hope one day you realize the consequences of your actions," I said, and with that I walked away, leaving her stunned in the living room. As I retreated to the bedroom, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. The confrontation was everything I had hoped it would be, and yet so much more. I had finally spoken my truth, and in doing so I had taken a step toward reclaiming my life. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. I would face judgment, heartbreak, and confusion, but I was ready to embrace it all. Later, that night as I lay in bed, I thought about the kids and how this separation would affect them. It tore at me, but I also knew that a happy father is far better than a miserable husband who stays for the sake of appearances. I wanted them to see that life can continue, even after heartbreak. I wanted to show them resilience. The following morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. I had made my stand, and now it was time to prepare for the next phase of my life. I was moving towards something new, something better. I'd let go of the hurt and betrayal, and instead, I'd channel that energy into building a future that would be bright and fulfilling. Little did I know, I was about to embark on a journey of rediscovery and self-reinvention, one that would bring me closer to who I truly wanted to be. Moving day arrived quicker than I anticipated, and strangely enough, I felt a sense of excitement bubbling beneath the surface. I knew it was a significant step in my journey, a chance for a fresh start, a new chapter where I could reclaim my identity after the betrayal. I had spent the last few weeks meticulously packing up our life, sorting through memories, and deciding what to take and what to leave behind. In a way, it felt liberating to discard the remnants of a relationship that had become tainted. The movers showed up early, and I felt a mix of nerves and anticipation as I watched them load boxes into the truck. I had already notified Jessica about the move, though I could tell she was still grappling with the reality of it. She had tried to convince me to reconsider, but I stood firm in my decision. I was ready for this change, and I wouldn't let her doubts sway me. As the day progressed, I found myself reminiscing about the years we spent in that house. I remembered the countless family dinners, birthday celebrations, and lazy Sundays spent lounging on the couch. But now, those memories felt distant, replaced by the sharp sting of betrayal. I had to remind myself that those moments didn't define me or our family anymore. I felt a strange mix of grief and relief, knowing I was moving toward a brighter future. By midday, the truck was loaded, and I took one last look at the house. It was a bittersweet moment. I felt like I was closing the door on a chapter that had turned sour. I hoped that the next occupants would create happier memories there, free from the weight of infidelity that lingered in the walls. Once the movers arrived at my new home, I couldn't contain my excitement. The house was everything I'd imagined, spacious, modern, and filled with potential. As I stood in the living room looking out at the well-manicured backyard, I felt a surge of hope. This was a blank canvas, and I was ready to paint it with new experiences and memories. The kids came by later that afternoon to see the new house. I could sense their excitement as they ran through the rooms, exploring every nook and cranny. "Look, Dad, this is so cool!" My youngest, Charlie, exclaimed, his eyes wide with wonder. It warmed my heart to see them happy. I wanted them to feel at home here, to see this as a positive change rather than a loss. As I set up their rooms, I made a conscious effort to create a space that felt familiar, yet new. I hung their favorite posters and added personal touches to make it a place where they would feel comfortable. I wanted them to know that despite the upheaval in their lives, they would still have a loving and supportive environment. Later that evening, as I tucked the kids into bed, I felt a sense of fulfillment I hadn't experienced in a long time. They were a part of this new beginning, and I could already envision the memories we would create together in this home. I kissed them good night and lingered in the hallway for a moment, listening to their soft breathing. It was a reminder that they were my priority, and I would do everything in my power to provide them with a stable and happy life. As the days turned into weeks, I settled into my new routine. I found a new job that paid well and allowed me to spend more time with the kids. I even enrolled them in nearby schools that had great reputations. I began to feel a sense of stability return to my life, and it felt exhilarating. I was becoming the father I had always wanted to be, one who was present and engaged, but I wasn't just focused on my kids. I continued to grow closer to Sarah, the woman I had met before the move. Our connection deepened as we spent more time together. She was kind and understanding and brought a lightness to my life that I hadn't realized I needed. I was cautious, of course, knowing that jumping into a new relationship so soon after my marriage ended could lead to complications. But with Sarah, I felt safe. We talked openly about our pasts, our hopes, and our dreams, and it was refreshing to connect on such a genuine level. One weekend, we decided to take the kids on a small outing to a nearby amusement park. It was a moment I had started to look forward to. Seeing the kids laugh and enjoy themselves, along with Sarah, felt like a breath of fresh air. They got along surprisingly well, and I could see the joy in their faces as they rode roller coasters and indulged in cotton candy. It was a reminder that life could be fun again, that happiness was within reach. But beneath the surface, I knew I had to deal with the reality of my old life. Jessica had made it clear that she was not handling the separation well. She would text me frequently, often with a mix of anger and desperation, reminding me of the good times we'd shared. I could tell she was struggling with the fallout of her choices, and while part of me felt compassion, I also knew that I couldn't allow myself to get dragged back into her drama. I had to firmly set boundaries. One evening, after yet another emotional text from her, I decided to respond. "Jessica, I hope you find happiness, but I can't be part of your life anymore. We need to focus on co-parenting for the kids. Please respect that." It was a simple message, but it felt empowering to assert my boundaries. Over the next few weeks, I continued to lay the groundwork for my new life. I was determined to make the most of the situation, to turn the betrayal into a catalyst for growth and self-discovery. I went to the gym, embraced new hobbies, and even joined a local community group where I met other single parents. It felt good to connect with people who understood the challenges I faced. As I stood in my new kitchen one evening preparing dinner for the kids, I couldn't help but smile at how far I had come. I had transformed my pain into strength, and I was ready to face whatever came next. My life was not perfect, but it was mine. I was learning to embrace the unknown, to see it as an opportunity for growth rather than a fear of the past. The journey was far from over, but I felt equipped to handle whatever challenges lay ahead. I had a new home, a new lease on life, and most importantly, a renewed sense of self. The betrayal would no longer define me. Instead, it would be the fuel for my transformation. I was ready to move forward, embracing this new beginning with open arms. As the weeks turned into months, my life began to stabilize in ways I never expected. I had settled into my new home, adjusted to my new job, and most importantly, I had forged a new routine for the kids and myself. The early days of uncertainty gave way to a sense of normalcy, one that was filled with laughter, adventure, and even the occasional chaos that comes with parenting. Sarah and I continued to cultivate our budding relationship. Our outings with the kids became more frequent, and each interaction seemed to solidify our connection. I appreciated how she respected my past and my feelings. She never pushed me to rush into anything, and instead, she allowed our relationship to develop organically. It felt different from what I had with Jessica, and that difference was refreshing. One Saturday, we decided to take the kids to the zoo. It was a beautiful day, and the sun shone brightly as we strolled through the different exhibits. I watched Sarah interact with my kids, laughing and playing along as they pointed out their favorite animals. There was a moment when Charlie tugged at her hand to show her a family of elephants, and I felt a warmth spread through me. This was it. This was the kind of family I had always wanted. But beneath the happiness, I still had to confront the lingering shadow of Jessica. She hadn't taken our separation lightly. She often reached out, trying to rekindle some connection, but I remained resolute. I had made my boundaries clear, yet she still seemed unable to accept that our marriage was irretrievably broken. Just when I thought she was beginning to move on, she would send another emotional message, expressing her regret and pain. Then came the day that would change everything. I was at home, organizing the kids' playroom while they were out with Sarah, when I received a call from Jessica. Seeing her name on my phone sent a jolt of anxiety through me, but I answered anyway. "Mark," she started, her voice shaky. "I know we haven't spoken much, but I really need to talk to you. Can we meet?" I hesitated. There was so much I wanted to say, but part of me feared it would only reopen old wounds. Yet I also recognized that we needed to establish some sort of communication for the sake of the kids, especially since we had been navigating this separation for some time now. "Okay, Jessica. Let's meet at the coffee shop down the street," I replied cautiously. When I arrived, I found her sitting at a table, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup. She looked different, more fragile, with dark circles under her eyes. The moment I sat down, I could feel the tension in the air. "Thank you for coming," she said softly, almost sheepishly. "I just wanted to talk, to explain myself." "Jessica, we don't need to rehash everything. What's done is done," I interrupted, trying to maintain control over the conversation. But she pressed on, her voice trembling as she recounted her feelings of emptiness and regret. "I never meant for things to go as far as they did. I made terrible choices and I can't take them back. I miss us, Mark. I miss our family." It was infuriating to listen to her lament while I was trying to move on. I could see that she was struggling, but I couldn't allow myself to be pulled back into her emotional turmoil. "Jessica, you had a family. You chose to throw it away. I can't be your safety net anymore. I'm rebuilding my life without you." She looked crushed, and for a fleeting moment I felt a pang of sympathy. But I quickly reminded myself of the reality I was facing. I had to stay firm. "This isn't just about us. It's about our kids. We need to focus on what's best for them." Her expression shifted from sadness to anger. "You think you can just walk away from what we had? I'm still their mother and you can't replace me." "Replace you? That's not what this is about. This is about moving forward. I'm not trying to erase you, but I can't live in the past either." I shot back, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. We continued to exchange heated words, both of us passionate about our perspectives. But deep down, I knew this conversation was necessary. It was about establishing some clarity in our relationship, and while it was uncomfortable, it was also cathartic. As we wrapped up our discussion, I felt a sense of relief mixed with sadness. I had said everything I needed to say, and while Jessica didn't seem ready to accept the finality of our situation, I knew I had to protect my newfound happiness. "Remember, Jessica, the kids will always come first. Let's keep our communications focused on them," I said firmly, standing up to leave. As I walked away, the weight of the conversation lingered. I had set a boundary, and although it felt like a painful reminder of what I had lost, it also reinforced the progress I had made. I was no longer the man I had been during our marriage. I was moving forward, embracing a new identity. In the days that followed, I found myself reflecting on the encounter. It reminded me just how far I had come in my healing process. I was starting to understand that moving on didn't mean I had to forget about my past. It meant I could acknowledge it without allowing it to control my future. As I settled into my new routine, I felt a renewed sense of determination. I was building a life that was entirely my own, and it was filled with new possibilities. I had my kids, my job, and Sarah, who continued to be a vital source of support. And while the shadows of my past still lingered, I was learning to embrace the light ahead. I was ready for whatever came next, knowing that I could face it with strength and resilience. The journey of healing was not easy, but I was finally on the right path, one that would lead to a brighter and more fulfilling future. As the months rolled on, I found myself navigating the complexities of co-parenting with Jessica while further solidifying my relationship with Sarah. Life had settled into a rhythm that felt comfortable, albeit not without its challenges. I was learning to juggle my responsibilities as a father while also exploring this new romantic avenue with someone who genuinely cared about me. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Sarah and I sat on the couch, unwinding after a busy day. I couldn't help but smile as we talked about our week and the fun we had planned for the upcoming weekend, a little camping trip with the kids. I felt a sense of peace wash over me, something I hadn't experienced in a long time. "You know," Sarah said, turning to me with a twinkle in her eye, "I think it's amazing how you've handled everything. You've turned a really tough situation into something positive." Her words struck a chord. I had faced significant turmoil, but I was slowly learning that I was stronger than I realized. Everything I had gone through, betrayal, heartbreak, and the struggle to rebuild, had shaped me into someone more resilient and determined to create a life filled with joy and authenticity. "I've learned a lot about myself," I admitted. "I've realized that I can't dwell on the past if I want to build a better future." Sarah nodded in agreement. "And look at you now. You're a great father and it's clear your kids adore you. That's what truly matters." Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. I had grown accustomed to her messages, often a mix of updates about the kids and her attempts to reconnect. This time, however, it felt different. She was reaching out about a school event that required both of our presence. I took a deep breath, knowing that co-parenting meant working together even when emotions ran high. The following weekend, we attended the school event together. I arrived with a calm demeanor, determined to keep things civil for the sake of the kids. I spotted Jessica across the room, chatting with other parents. As I approached her, I felt a twinge of anxiety, but I quickly pushed it aside. "Hey Jessica," I said, trying to sound casual. "Mark, thanks for coming," she replied, her voice steady. "I know this is hard for both of us." I nodded, appreciating her acknowledgement. "Let's just focus on the kids today." As we watched our children play and interact with their friends, it struck me how far we had come since our separation. We were no longer the couple who had once shared dreams and plans. Instead, we were two co-parents navigating a new reality. Although there was an underlying tension, We were managing to put our differences aside for the sake of our kids. Later that day, as I caught a glimpse of Jessica laughing with Charlie, I felt a flicker of nostalgia. It was bittersweet to see her engaged and happy, but it also reminded me of the need to let go. I didn't want to resent her. I wanted to focus on the present and how to coexist peacefully. As the event concluded, Jessica approached me again, a hint of vulnerability in her expression. "Mark, I know I messed up. I've been working on myself and trying to understand what went wrong in our marriage. I'm sorry for everything," she said, her sincerity palpable. I took a moment to digest her words. I appreciated the apology. It showed growth. On her part, "Thank you, Jessica. I think we both made mistakes. I just want us to co-parent effectively and raise happy kids." With that, I felt a sense of closure begin to settle in. It was as if we were finally acknowledging the past, both its pain and its lessons, without it holding us captive any longer. In the weeks that followed, I continued to foster a sense of stability and happiness in my life. Sarah and I grew closer, and I knew I wanted to take our relationship to the next level. I wanted to introduce her to my kids more often, to merge our lives in a way that felt natural. One evening, while we were all gathered for dinner, I broached the topic. "Hey kids, how would you feel about spending more time with Sarah? Maybe going on some family outings together?" Their faces lit up, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "That would be awesome, Dad," Emily exclaimed, clearly enthusiastic about the idea. I could see Sarah's eyes sparkle with joy as she smiled at the kids. It felt right. I had finally begun to create the life I had envisioned, a blended family that embraced love, laughter, and resilience. As I took a moment to reflect on how far I had come, I realized that the pain of the past had still served its purpose. It had taught me valuable lessons about love, trust, and the importance of self-worth. I had taken a journey through betrayal, heartbreak, and transformation, emerging stronger and more self-aware. Looking back, I understood that life would never be perfect, but I was learning to navigate its complexities with grace. I was focused on building a future that honored my past while embracing new opportunities. And as I looked around the dinner table, seeing Sarah and my kids laughing together, I knew that happiness was not just a distant dream. It was within my reach, and I was grasping it with both hands. In the end, I had learned that true strength does not come from avoiding pain, but from confronting it head-on and allowing it to shape a better version of yourself. I was ready for whatever lay ahead, knowing that I had the tools and the mindset to create a life filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities.